My name is Elena Hart. I'm 45 years old. For over 17 years, I worked as the operations director at a mid-sized tech firm in Chicago. I wasn't flashy, I wasn't political, I just made everything work. I knew the systems, the clients, the glitches, the shortcuts. Every thread in the company ran through me. When something broke, I fixed it before anyone even knew. My boss, Darren, used to call me the engine behind the curtain. I thought he meant it with respect. Turns out, he meant it literally, because engines are meant to run, not to be seen. And one day, without warning, he decided I was no longer needed. It started 2 months before it all fell apart. Darren hired someone new, young, energetic, fresh out of a top MBA program. Her name was Madison. She shadowed me, asked questions, took notes. Darren said she was an assistant to help me scale more effectively. I didn't question it. I was tired, and the help sounded nice. I trained her. I gave her the internal playbook I wrote myself over a decade. I handed her keys to systems. Even Darren didn't understand, and slowly, I started noticing the shift. Madison started joining executive meetings I wasn't invited to. I'd see files on the server I didn't create. One day I walked into a strategy call and found her leading it. Darren said it was just to give her experience. "You're still the boss," he said with that same cold grin I'd later see during the worst moment of my career. But deep down, my gut knew, I wasn't training an assistant, I was training a replacement. Then it happened. Friday, 5:42 p.m. Darren called me into his office. No warning, no thank you, just a severance letter, and a shallow line about restructuring. I stood there frozen. "You're serious?" I asked. He nodded and said, "We appreciate everything you've done, Elena. Truly. But the company's evolving, we need fresh direction." And just like that, 17 years of loyalty were wiped out with a script he'd probably rehearsed in the mirror. I didn't argue. I didn't cry. I packed my things while Madison stood outside pretending to scroll on her phone, not meeting my eyes. Everyone went silent. That kind of silence that happens when people know something cruel just happened, but are too afraid to say it. But here's what Darren didn't know. I had built everything, and I never gave them the updated master systems access. Not because I was planning revenge, but because I never imagined they'd be so stupid as to cut off the only person who actually knew how to run their empire. And that silence they left me in, that space, that was where I started planning, not to get even but to take everything they didn't realize I still held. That weekend, I didn't sleep much, not because I was angry. I had moved past anger. What kept me awake was the realization that Darren had no idea what he'd done. He didn't just fire me, he exposed himself. Every process, every vendor relationship, every quarterly report template, every custom back-end workflow, I had created all of it, and none of it existed in the tidy handover folder they believed was complete. Because the real keys weren't in the files, they were in me. I had spent years simplifying chaos, making impossible systems flow smoothly. I knew where all the cracks were, the ones I patched with custom scripts, last-minute deals and favors built on personal trust. Darren thought he had taken the house and locked me out, but he didn't know I was the one who installed the doors, and he'd just fired the only person who knew how the hinges worked. What they had now was the shell of a business. Pretty dashboards, empty engines. That Monday, the calls started, quiet at first. A vendor asking why their automated invoices weren't coming through. A partner wondering why a key report hadn't been submitted to the board. I wasn't malicious. I hadn't sabotaged anything. I just stopped doing the invisible magic I'd done every day for free. The things they assumed were automatic. Those were me, making miracles behind the scenes. Without that, cracks became canyons. By midweek I got a message from a colleague still at the company. "Something's off," she said. "Madison's panicking. She can't access half the tools." Darren's blaming IT. Everyone's scrambling. I didn't respond. I just read it again, then closed my laptop, because I didn't need to rush. Revenge isn't about explosions, it's about precision. And Darren had just walked into a minefield he didn't know I built. I pulled out a folder I'd kept for years, not out of paranoia, but out of responsibility. Notes, protocols, diagrams of how the entire company's backend functioned. I stared at it for a while, debating whether I'd let it all burn, but that wasn't who I was. I didn't want chaos. I wanted clarity, for me, for my next step. So I made a list of every asset I had built from scratch and thought, what would happen if I started over, with my own firm? So while Darren tried to untangle the knots I used to keep hidden, I started making quiet calls, to vendors, to ex-clients, to contractors I trusted. I didn't tell them the full story. I didn't need to. I just said, hey, I might be starting something soon. Would you be interested? And every single one of them said, if you're building it, we're in. I rented a small workspace downtown. Nothing flashy, just 4 white walls, a strong Wi-Fi connection, and silence, the kind of silence that doesn't haunt you, but holds you steady. Every morning, I made coffee, opened my old notebooks and laid out the real infrastructure I'd built over the years, the things I wanted to do, but never could, because Darren was too focused on appearances to see true innovation. Now I had no one to impress and no one to stop me. I called my new project Anchor Systems. The name felt right. I had spent nearly 2 decades keeping another man's company afloat. Now it was time to plant something that couldn't be moved. I didn't rush. I didn't scream my return into the wind. I simply began designing better systems, smarter workflows, ethical contracts, simplified tools for companies who actually respected the people keeping their lights on, and all those vendors Darren thought he owned. They started coming to me. One by one, I got messages. I don't trust their new team. They're not paying on time. It doesn't run like it used to. Every time I responded calmly, if you're ever ready for something better, let me know. I wasn't stealing business. I was offering refuge, because word spreads quickly when a house starts falling apart, especially when the one holding the beams together was forced out without warning. Then came the call I didn't expect, a major client Darren had always wanted but never landed. They said they'd heard I was doing something new and wanted to talk. I didn't ask how they found out. I just set the meeting, showed up with a plan, and let my experience speak for itself. 30 minutes in, they said, why didn't you lead your own firm years ago? I smiled. Because I was too busy holding someone else's together. A week later, the contract was signed. It was bigger than any deal I'd ever managed under Darren, and it came with something no job title ever gave me: freedom. I didn't celebrate publicly. I didn't post anything online. I just closed the deal, walked outside into the cold, and let the wind hit my face. I had built something on my terms, and no one could take it from me. Meanwhile, Darren's company was slipping. Madison, for all her credentials, didn't know how to reverse engineer the soul of a business she didn't build. Clients were leaving, systems were breaking, and their internal software still running on the outdated back end. I never updated. I wasn't watching to enjoy it. I just watched to confirm it. And when I saw their job post searching for a new operations director, I knew they were drowning in a pool. They thought they could swim without me. It came on a Thursday afternoon, 2:07 p.m. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something in my gut told me to pick up. Hi, Alina. It's Darren. I didn't say a word. Let the silence stretch. Let him feel, for just a moment, what it was like to be on the other side of it. Finally, he spoke. I know things didn't end well. I was wondering if you'd consider consulting. Just temporarily. We're ironing out some system issues, and Madison's moved on. Moved on. That's what he called it. Not she quit. Not we're drowning. Just moved on. I let him keep his illusion. I told him I was busy with clients of my own, which was true. I told him I could maybe recommend someone, which was a lie. And before he could ask again, I ended the call with a smile in my voice. Take care of yourself, Darren. I'm sure you'll figure something out. The next day, I had my team draft a public launch for Anchor Systems. No drama. Just a clean, crisp website, a strong message about leadership that values loyalty, and a handful of testimonials from vendors and clients Darren used to claim as his network. I didn't need to name names. Anyone who knew the industry knew exactly what happened, and anyone who didn't, they just saw excellence, with no history of failure behind it. But failure has a funny way of sticking. Darren's company was now a cautionary tale in local circles. Don't let what happened to Darren happen to you, became something whispered in pitch meetings. His investors pulled back. He tried pivoting, rebranding, hiring. But when your reputation starts to rot from the inside, fresh paint on the walls doesn't change the smell. And all the while I kept building silently, calmly, consistently. I received an email from Madison about a month later. One sentence. I'm sorry. I didn't know they were setting you up. I didn't reply. She wasn't the enemy. She was just a pawn too eager to climb, not realizing she was stepping on the wrong shoulders, and that she'd carry it longer than I ever could teach. Meanwhile, my calendar was full, my inbox flooded with opportunities I used to chase in another life, and my name, Elena Hart, began circulating not as someone who used to work at Darren's company, but as the founder of one of the fastest rising consulting firms in the region. And I did it all without screaming, without sabotaging, just by letting the truth breathe. It's strange how peace doesn't always come with a finish line. Sometimes it arrives quietly. You don't even notice it until you're walking through your day without flinching at the name that used to haunt you. That's how I knew I was free. Not when I signed the biggest contract of my career. Not when I saw Darren's company shrink to a ghost of what it once was. No, it was when I walked past our old office building one evening, glanced up and felt nothing. There was no bitterness, no vengeance, just perspective. That place had taken so much of me for so long, and yet it no longer held anything I needed. I wasn't carrying the anger anymore. I had replaced it with ownership. I didn't want my old title back. I didn't want his apology. I wanted impact. And now I had it. On my terms. On my name. Anchor Systems had grown to a team of 12, all women, all professionals who had been passed over, overlooked or quietly erased at some point in their careers. I didn't hire them out of pity. I hired them because they knew what it was like to be underestimated. And that makes for employees who don't play games. They show up, they deliver, they care, and together we were building something no layoff could touch. People began reaching out from other companies asking for workshops, strategy sessions, even keynote addresses. Me, the woman who was told she was too embedded in the old systems, the one who trained her own replacement and got dismissed like an outdated app. Now they wanted to learn from me. And the irony, I didn't even need to prove I was right. Time had done that for me. One of Darren's former clients approached us directly. I knew the account. I'd built the workflow that had saved them millions. They asked what my rates were. I didn't hesitate, quoted them double what they used to pay his firm. They agreed without blinking. That's when it hit me. The respect I had been denied for years wasn't missing. It was just waiting for me to stop asking and start owning. And in the back of it all, Darren remained silent. Maybe he was watching. Maybe he wasn't. But if he ever looked me up, he'd see exactly what he threw away. Not a worker, not a number, but a builder, a strategist, a storm dressed in quiet clothes. And by the time he realized what I truly was, I was already too far ahead to even hear him calling. I've thought a lot about the version of me who stayed late without complaint, who covered mistakes that weren't hers, who believed that loyalty would be repaid with security, that women deserved better. And now, she has it. I didn't become someone new after Darren fired me. I became someone real, unfiltered, undeniable, fully in control of her value, and finally, no longer asking anyone else to recognize it. Anchor Systems is no longer just a company, it's a declaration. It's the answer to every whispered dismissal, every "you're just operations," every time a woman like me was told to step aside while someone else took the spotlight. And we're not just succeeding. We're changing the rules. We're proving that quiet competence, paired with unwavering self-respect, is more powerful than any pitch deck full of buzzwords. I still don't talk about Darren, not because I'm protecting him, but because he no longer matters in the narrative. He was a catalyst, a test, a storm I had to walk through to realize what I was capable of. I don't need him to say I'm sorry. His silence, his fading is all the apology I'll ever need, and even that, I've moved past it. My life is too full, too honest, too earned to carry his weight any longer. Sometimes people ask me what I'd do if I saw him again. I tell them the truth. I'd nod, maybe even smile, not out of forgiveness, but because I've made peace with the pain. He didn't just fire me, he freed me. He handed me the opportunity to stop building someone else's legacy and start crafting my own. And I took it, brick by brick, client by client, without rage, without noise. To anyone who's been betrayed, replaced, or underestimated, don't waste your energy proving people wrong. Use that energy to prove yourself right. Build in silence. Let the noise come later. When you're standing so tall, they can't look at your success without tasting regret. Because in the end, I didn't need revenge. I needed clarity. And I got it, with interest.